the presentation on the... Yes, perfect. So communication works, obviously. Fantastic. Yeah, another welcome. I think it's the fourth office today. We are very, very happy that basically the first day of this kickoff meeting for our new research and innovation project, Pacesetters, culminates in a public event where we, after a long day of very intense conversations and lots of presentations and hard work on the kickoff of this project, we did not want to miss the opportunity to share the celebrations of this wonderful new project where we have the privilege and the honor and the pleasure to start today to share this with you and to turn this into a kind of public event. We have invited colleagues, PhD candidates and our students to join us. I think everybody's comfortable and has seats, no? Yeah. In the room, we also have quite a nice audience online, so everything will be streamed. So welcome to all the people who join us via Zoom. I just checked it before the meeting, and I never really looked at the registrations, and then I saw 165 people, and I said, whoa. Welcome, and thanks a lot for joining us, online and offline, in person and remotely. We just want to give you a short introduction for how we thought we spent the next 2 hours. First, we will give you, and this might be slightly redundant for those of you who joined since the early morning, we will give you another take trying to introduce this project and the main ambitions and ideas and objectives that motivated us to submit this proposal. So Mari Sanden, my dear colleague, with whom all this would have been absolutely impossible even to imagine, and me will give you a short introduction into the project. This is supposed to be something like 10-15 minutes. And then we thought we start a little experiment. We have invited all our fellow researcher consortium partners in this project, and we have 15 different organizations from all over Europe. And I think 1 year ago we organized the International Conference for Artistic Research, and we had I think 2 or 3 keynote speakers. Yeah. Now we had a whole day with potentially 25 keynote speakers in the room. Yeah. So we thought, okay, we open this up and we give everybody who wants and has the ambition, the opportunity to introduce one concept or one term or one word that for him or her is particularly important in order to drive the transition. We do this in the kind of Pekakucha format. I think if you still remember, it's a kind of Y2K thing or something like this. Maybe it comes back into fashion now. It's a 7 minutes presentation with only one slide. And we will have 10 of these presentations and no breaks, and we will introduce them in alphabetical order of the concept or of the term. Yeah. So it's a big surprise for everybody, and we are looking forward how this experiment ends. So let us briefly introduce the main ideas and the main ambitions behind this project, Pacesetters. We borrowed the metaphor from sports, so it's in long distance or mid distance runs. Yeah? The pace setter is the one who immediately starts with a very high speed in order to avoid that potential winners or favorites of winning the race end up with tactical maneuvering and just save their forces. So the pace setters play a very, very crucial role in order to make sure that the speed of the race is very high from the very beginning. We thought that this is an interesting metaphor we would like to use in order to describe the role that we want to play as artists and creatives, cultural workers and professionals, but also as scientists and researchers when it comes to driving the climate transition. So there is one thing that is really, really important and dear, and also I think probably even something that is relatively or entirely new in the context of Horizon Europe projects. We really want to put a strong emphasis on the idea of artistic and practice-based research. We see this, and we had a very interesting presentation this morning from our policy officer, how the European Commission opened up and gave every year art and culture a more important role in their policies. Yeah? And I think with Horizon Europe we have reached a very, very interesting moment that also includes artistic and practice-based research across the creative disciplines. So it is very important for us, and this is how I would like to start this first argument. What we want to do is research and innovation through the arts and through culture and heritage, rather than about it. So this is, I think, very, very crucial. And one of our main ambitions, or the primary goal in this context, is to turn the fragmentation of the sector, the cultural and creative sectors and industries, to turn this fragmentation from a weakness into a strength. And we think artistic research, practice-based research, is necessary in order to achieve this ambition. Because everybody complains about the fragmentation of the sector. Yeah? The CCIs, if you allow me to abbreviate this now, the cultural and creative sectors and industries, the CCIs consist of 90% of small and medium-sized enterprises, and among them 60% are solo entrepreneurs, and I think this is very, very conservative estimates. The actual numbers might be much higher. The problem is that creative siloing is also blamed then for a quite notable lack of data and evidence regarding the actual impact and the value of, let's say, the entire production across art and culture. So if we say we want to turn the fragmentation from a weakness into a strength, then our main aim is to enhance and update the understanding of the challenges and opportunities in the climate transition through a series of co-researched creative case studies that are preparing the ground for what we call an ecosystem-oriented approach for the CCIs as a whole. Mari will later go a bit deeper into this, but the idea is that this will unlock the potential of a myriad of best, good, advanced and advancing practices, but also the potential of the failed practices that are operating on all levels across art and culture, heritage and creativity. It would allow us to appreciate the diversity of the creative practices, both on a micro level, but also on a macro level, geographically, culturally. It would enable innovation that runs across the creative disciplines and cuts through the silos. And it would allow us to translate research, and we have indeed discussed a lot about this today, to translate research into innovation practices close to real time. So not to wait 4 years until the results of a research project are validated and peer-reviewed and the publishing house was found, and then after 4 years it's finally published. And the danger is that nobody is interested in it anymore. So we want to experiment with new formats that allow us to translate research more or less or close to real time into innovative creative practices. And the second ambition is to reframe the urgencies of the climate transition. We all heard a lot in the recent years about multiple crisis situations, and I think the overall result is that the creative capacities in our sectors are increasingly limited to a kind of ad hoc supply of illustration, embellishment, or decoration, or entertainment. This is what usually or conventionally artists and creatives are called for. But these multiple crisis situations and the unprecedented challenges that we are facing, they are also full of potential to rethink, undo, and reframe the very idea of the urgency of the crisis. Yeah. So I think research practices in and through the arts and culture and the creative disciplines should be considered advancing rather than advanced, as we called it in our cost action, if their responses to the societal challenges are not reducing the complexity that is at stake to oversimplified messages. And this would, for me, the main criterion for an advancement. And this is particularly important in cross-disciplinary collaborations, because here we draw expertise and experience from various different fields. And if there's one thing I would always argue that artists and creatives are really good in, it is dealing with uncertainties, ambiguities, and paradoxes that will definitely arise from these kind of cross-disciplinary collaborations, especially when they aim at intervening at systems level and require such an ecosystem approach. And the third aspect is our ambition to and recontextualize the very idea of innovation, or what does it actually mean to create something new today. I mean, we just talked with our colleagues from architecture, and some of them tell us that for the first time they are confronted with a generation of students who don't want to build new houses anymore. They would rather put the focus on renovating existing buildings. Yeah? And I think we have similar examples in all the creative disciplines. So there is a tremendous need for not only circular and sustainable, but for truly regenerative approaches. And I think that these advancing practices in artistic and practice-based research can, in that sense, pave the way for what could also be called a decolonization of the very concept of innovation itself. Because innovation is a key element of a terminology of economic and social development in which various different discourses compete over meaning. And at least since the 19th century, probably much earlier, maybe the Renaissance, or the Reconquista, the humanist understanding of what it means to create something new has been dominated by strategies of extractivism, exploitation, and colonial conquest. And these strategies, they constantly replicate legacies of subjugation by erasing entire domains of knowledge in order to conquer them as empty or blank spaces. Nothing has been there. We just took it over. On a daily basis, they reiterate the hierarchization of knowledge according to a model of the university that segregates its faculties. And in doing so, they promote the illusion of a sovereign individual and glorify then on that basis the individual enterprise. So I think decolonizing innovation means moving away from a model of both creativity and entrepreneurship that is based on a claim of technological novelty, yeah, combined with individual short-term incentives. And we have to replace this with a different understanding of innovation that is driven by co-agency and new capabilities to act together in sustainable and regenerative ways. And this also challenges the traditional notions of justice as a more or less stable equilibrium between competing interests. And within these mobile fluids and flows of culture, emerging dynamics of spatial justice, data justice, intergenerational justice, just to name the most obvious examples that we want to address in our work package 1, we insist on fundamentally different considerations in terms of their economic, aesthetic, and environmental sustainability.
Yes. Next slide. So Pacesetters is planning to turn these ambitions into innovative creative practices. So first slide. So we will start with, we have 3 phases, and the first phase is the creative case studies. The first phase of Pacesetters is characterized by collaborative cross-disciplinary research in 12 case studies. The Pacesetters creative case studies will identify and investigate what we call now advancing practices and models in the CCI. These creative case studies allows in-depth, multifaceted exploration of complex issues, but also in the concrete cases in real-life settings. The creative case studies will address cross-cutting challenges and focus on 3 main areas where we think the CCIs shows most potential to drive the climate transition, which is on the one side, alternative modes and means of production, circulation, and evaluation. We have grouped them in 3 different topics. The first topic is decentralized architectures. We will look at how sustainable re-industrialization by translating avant-garde strategies into mainstream production. The second topic is collective intelligences. We will look at big data, parametric design, and the future of event industries. And the third topic is what we call shared creativity. And we want to understand and foster a drive to claim ownership of the transition, documenting impact and value, and how we can alternate or experiment with the monitoring of progress. Next slide, please. We will then, in the second phase, it's you. I need to stay away from you. Okay. So in the second phase, we will work in Real World Laboratories to test these case studies. We have 3 Real World Laboratories. We have one in Genalguacil and the neighboring villages in Valle del Genal, Andalusia in Spain, very south of Spain. We have another Real World Laboratory in Galway and in the part of the International Arts Festival in Ireland. And we have a third one in Nowa Huta and part of the Cultural Center in Nowa Huta, and that's in Krakow in Poland. And then the last phase of a project will take into evaluation and support frameworks. And this we will think about because we have to work on all 3 phases at the same time. We not only look at the cases, but also in the way that we evaluate the contributions from arts and culture. So the third phase is the evaluation and support frameworks. And we will have we will try to build a cross-disciplinary transformation process framework. But that has 5 focus areas. The first one is the challenges for the CCI due to the climate transition. The second is to develop and co-create progress and performance indicators. The third one is to develop a compilation of social impact and assessment strategies. Then we want to outline a valorization strategies that is looking at how the CCI can help and drive the climate transition. And then our final one will develop digital support frameworks built on trust, transparency, and reputation. Then next slide.
So basically, Pacesetters will explore new ways of working together which allow us to rethink impact, quality, and value. And I think the advancement of research practices across the arts does not, it does not reject the concept of instrumentalization as such. It rather reverses the instrumentalization through processes of critical and self-critical reflection. And this is what is very much at stake in Work Package 3, but also in the way how we organize, how we design the case studies and how we implement and test them then in the real world laboratories. Under the conditions and in the frameworks of a co-agency or a collective agency, this reflection can pave the way for co-creation of dynamic sets of transparent, verifiable, and most importantly also accountable criteria how to describe or maybe even assess these processes. What is very, very important for us in this context, and this I think cannot be underestimated when it comes to this triangle, no? How we connect the value, quality, and impact as the three main parameters of how our activities will be evaluated. We insist on a concept of exaptation, which is a kind of counter concept to adaptation. Yeah? It's a concept from evolution that we borrow from evolutionary biology, and it's basically a kind of repurposing of processes, products, or any kind of functionality. Yeah? So the best example that the biologists usually use for this, to describe this concept of exaptation, is birds grew feathers in order to impress the other sex. Only much later they found out that you can also use them for flying. Yeah. So I think this, I mean, is the kind of, yeah, the idea or the reference we are referring to when we say innovation usually takes place in the places where it is least expected. Yeah. Very often, these places or situations that are designed or even over-designed in order to enable radical, disruptive innovation, yeah, turn out as rather uninnovative. Yeah? And the innovation or the disruptive innovation happens through an actual repurposing of existing functionalities. So I think this is also, this argument is also very important because often, and it's not only artists, yeah, it's also architects and designers get accused. I mean, when you say, okay, we make art in order to drive the climate transition, or design or architecture in order to struggle for a societal purpose. Yeah. Often there is a polemic that this would instrumentalize the arts. Yeah. It would make art functional. Yeah. So, as I said, we do not simply reject this polemic. It is particularly relevant and important because one of our real-world laboratories literally takes place in the model city of socialist realist architecture, yeah, in Nova Huta. Yeah. We acknowledge, and we have to acknowledge, and this will be a very, very interesting learning process, how the different perspectives, how the different histories and backgrounds, and how the different understandings of what is heritage. Yeah. So we have to acknowledge these different perspectives and resolve the dilemma in a constructive and productive way. And I think here acceptation offers strategies as a pathway to social impact that allows for the coexistence of multiple attitudes that either emphasize a claim to autonomy from political imperatives or briefings, yeah, and underline the urgency of taking a political and pragmatic stance in the midst of societal upheaval and the polycrisis situation. So this radical repurposing enables a maximum of artistic freedom by avoiding a direct, linear, or in any way predominantly instrumental relation between the creative solution and a societal purpose or a political briefing. And on the contrary, it is supposed to embrace the complexity of these often contradictory or paradoxical relations, and it regenerates them as, I would argue, the condition of creativity as such. As one very practical example of acceptation or repurposing, we have asked our dear colleagues to maybe even repurpose a word, term, or concept and present it in 7-minute statements to us.